live, which has a short delay of approximately 10 seconds. You can watch at youtube.com/City of Monterey or on the YouTube app on Google Play or Apple App Store. To make a public comment, when viewers watching live on YouTube or Channel 25 see the announcement on the lower third caption on the bottom of your screen, call the conference line, dial area code 831-225-030. When prompted, enter the code 1927648 pound. Once you have entered the system, dial *5 to raise your hand and you will be added to the queue to speak. And as of now, I don't have any callers in the queue. Callers will be automatically unmuted until it is their turn to speak. We ask that callers please turn off television or computer speakers or go to another room while connected by phone, as any background noise will cause interference with the broadcast. I will call on each caller in the order of their hands raised and call out the last 4 digits of each caller's phone number before I unmute them. I may also be calling individuals by the name based on caller ID.
Thank you. So we'll call the meeting to order. We have first the approval of the minutes of October 7, 2019 and October 13, 2020. And I have a technical question. May we approve them both at the same time, or do we need to do them separately?
I think both at the same time would be fine if they're
okay.
The vote's the same.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of October 7, 2019 and January 13, 2020.
So moved. Motion. Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor? Do we need to do a roll call? Yes, Lisa?
We can't hear you, Lisa.
You gotta unmute yourself.
Sorry, I have you on my screen, on my phone, and on 2 speakerphones. Okay, so I have Carol Sherbajian.
Aye.
Rick Hoyer.
Aye.
Nick Spina.
Aye.
Rick Aldinger.
Aye.
And I do not have Judy Sanderlin.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Now, this portion of the meeting is for the public to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Measure P&S Oversight Committee, which is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
Lisa, you're on mute.
Right, I don't have any callers in at this time.
Okay. Then we'll move on. We have board member comments. Measure P&S Oversight Committee members may ask a question for clarification, make a brief announcement, or make a brief report on his or her activities. In addition, the Measure P&S Oversight Committee may provide a referral to staff or other resources for factual information, request staff to report back to the body at a subsequent meeting concerning any city matter, or direct staff to place a request to agendize a matter of business on a future agenda. Do we have anything? Anyone? Rick? Nick?
None.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on. We're going to review the expenditures from July 2019 through May 30, 2020 for conformance to Measure P and Measure S language.
Carol, would you like me to put that on the screen for ease of reference, or do you want us to just take questions from the group?
Could you put it on the screen? That would be great.
Okay. Is everybody able to view it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Wonderful. I'll turn it back over to you, Carol.
Well, do you want to actually review it for us quickly?
Sure. So what you have before you is the multi-year TOT revenue and not TOT, but the measure P&S revenue and expenditures from inception. The yellow column represents what we've received and expended through May 31st, which is the period that we've closed before this Oversight Committee meeting. That's the yellow column. And so what that shows is that we've brought in about 47.7 million and we've expended 39 or almost 40 million with a balance of 7.8 million left. This committee also directed us to do an additional comparison that might be more informative, which is year over year for the same period. So the table below shows as of May 31st, 2019 year to date and May 31st, 2020 fiscal year to date. And you'll see the revenue definitely has dropped off. It's actually 11% decline from the same period the year prior. The appropriation is always a function of timing of projects. So I'm a little less concerned about the appropriation because we all know that sometimes projects ebb and flow based on project management and how we package our projects. The focus area on that table really is that the revenue decline of 11%. For some of you that have followed the financial meetings at the council meeting relative to our budget, you may be aware that with Measure P&S revenue for the period of May, we reported that there was actually a 50% loss for that period. And what I mean is that for Measure P&S revenue, May 2019's revenue was 658,000, but May 2020's revenue was only 330,000. So that's a loss of almost $328,000. It's a little complicated because there might be two things going on. One is the economic impact of COVID, where a lot of us might not be buying as much because of economic uncertainty, or that people have been buying more online through Amazon and other platforms. In both cases, the city of Monterey loses a lot of sales tax. The other major event that's happening is that the state allowed small businesses less than $5 million of taxable revenue to defer their tax liability or remittance for sales tax. And so that's an impact for the city as well. We do not have the ability to bifurcate what's causing this economic loss in our revenue, even with our experts. And the reason is because the state's program does not require small businesses to report what they are deferring. So again, they are not requiring these small businesses to report what they're deferring. So there's no way for us to tell you or the community what this 50% loss really is made of. So with that said, the 11% loss is based on cash flow. We're hoping a year from now, some of that will recover because these small businesses will sustain the pandemic and will pay this deferred amount. So I wanted to present what we have. And as good stewards, we will only budget and also appropriate what we receive. So in the future years, if there is a revenue uptick, then that'll come in and this committee will have those numbers and then can appropriate and budget accordingly. I think with that, Carol, I turn it back over to you and see if there's any questions from the committee.
I have actually two questions. Number one, when you're saying about Amazon, if you buy from Amazon, you have to put in what your zip code is so they can charge you the sales in California, so they can start charge you the sales tax appropriately. Does Monterey not receive any of that back?
Yes, we do receive some of it back. So when we buy merchandise online, the sales tax bylaw is very nuanced. We get what's called a pool allocation. So the revenues that come from the sales tax goes into the pool, and the pool is allocated based on how much revenue we generate from sales tax in our county. So in our county, we generate about 12% of the county sales tax total revenue. So when I pay $1 of sales tax, let's say, Carol, you pay $1 of sales tax. Monterey will only get 12% of that allocation now. In the past, we would typically get 100%. If you went down to the mall and you paid $1 of sales tax, I'm simplifying it, okay? I'm really just simplifying it. We would get 100% of that dollar. But when you buy it on Amazon, that same product you buy on Amazon, you'll probably still pay the dollar, but we actually only get 12%. We actually lose 88% of the sales tax when somebody buys online. So that ignores the concept of having to allocate to the state and the schools, okay? I'm just very much simplifying it. So when someone buys online, we lose 88% of the sales tax we would have received if they went to the mall or if they went downtown. So this pandemic really shifts a lot of people to buy online because a lot of stores have been closed. And there have been double-digit migration of online purchases already, but what this pandemic is going to show is the aftermath of how much people will maintain the online behavior, and what that may do long-term to our sales tax.
I have one more question then too, and just in listening at the city council meetings, it was reported that the sales tax overall was down 72%, but the Measure P and S money collection or sales tax collection was down 72% overall, but the Measure P and S money was only down 50%. How are we? I'm like that, but how are we down less than the regular sales tax?
Not to get too geeky on all of you, because I want to make sure we maintain a level of comprehension. Sales tax that is general fund, that is the state level, is governed by what's called the Bradley-Burns tax law. The local 1%, which are our Measure P and S and also Measure G, is covered by the transaction and use tax section of the revenue code. Those are two very distinct sets of code. For the everyday person like us on the calls, the primary differentiation, again, I'm only going to focus on the primary differentiation, is how automobile sales tax revenues come back to the city and how business-to-business sales tax comes back to the city. Those two areas of the law, as it pertains to the local sales tax, our Measure P, S, and G, is more favorable to the city of Monterey. So what you'll see if you ever study the general fund sales tax versus the local sales tax revenue, the local sales tax revenue actually generates a higher revenue to the city than the standard state amount because of these two nuances. Also, as you identified, Carol, it creates a difference in the nuance of that ratio. You're right. The sales tax dip for the general fund was huge, 70%, but the Measure P and S actually fluctuated only about 50%.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I was very happy that it's like, oh well, but no.
Yeah. For jurisdictions that have a very large automobile corridor, that relationship is reverse of what we experienced here. Right? So their sales tax and the general fund might have fluctuated 50%, but their Measure P would have fluctuated 70%. But for us, we don't have a very large auto dealership corridor, and we don't have a significant business to business. And so that fluctuation for us is actually more favorable on the Measure P and S side. So I hope that answers the question at this level. I don't want to get too more granular.
No, that's good. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Not so much a question. It's really, I learned a while ago. You go buy a car in Seaside, Monterey gets sales tax. Basically,
right.
What Lauren is saying. So if car sales are down, we're losing out on sales tax revenue, even though we're not selling a whole lot of cars in Monterey.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Shall we move on then to for the periodic report for the period of July 1, 2019 through May 31, 2020, please?
Okay.
Actually, Carol, isn't it we need to review the actual expenditures on that first report?
Yes, actually we do. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
I've got a couple questions. I'm seeing charges for topes. I'm assuming that's removing stumps and things that were found when doing the work. And I'm also seeing garden supplies under sidewalks.
So I can confirm the topes. We had some sidewalk tree stumps removed in relation to that work. That's the topes work there in general. Can you point to the garden supply? Do you know what page, perhaps?
It is, it's actually called plant supplies. It is the first page of the actual details under sidewalks.
Gotcha.
There were 4 different checks. And then plants further on, and yeah.
Yeah, so I can review that, but I believe that has to do with the rock that's put back around the trees when we do our tree well work for the sidewalk repair. And we put the tree wells back in. There's some rock that comes around that to save some money. We have had Louis boys and girls go ahead and put that around the trees to save money from the contract. I need to verify that for you, though. That's my assumption.
Okay. That'd be great. And then we also have a topes under pavement. I understand when it relates to, tree up, pushing up sidewalks and that kind of thing, but we're now in street pavement. We're having the same issue.
Yeah, what happens is in some of our areas of town where we don't have a sidewalk and the trees are adjacent to that, they can get to the pavement, and we have topes do that for the tree root pruning and so forth.
Okay. That's all the questions I've got. Well, I take it back. I'm seeing a fan rental for Big Sur Charter School.
Yeah, we went over that last time, and it was confirmed that was a project that was at the fan rental, and what it was for the I'm not sure why it's coming from the charter school, but we rented a fan to air out the pump station 11, as we call it, which is our stormwater pump station that needed some work at Lake El Estero. So to make sure that was vented out and accessible to staff, there was a fan that was placed down there to pull the fumes out and so forth. So it was work related to that pump station 11, as we call it, in our stormwater.
Yeah, because the description says fan rental for Big Sur Charter.
Yeah. I'll verify that once again. So now I know we rented a fan for that air access down at pump station 11.
That makes sense. I was just,
Yep.
based off the description, that's not what it is. So
Maybe just that needs to change.
that's all questions I have.
Okay, so on the city staff section for on each page, the allocations for staff, and then the last entry, second to last entry, or some of them anyway, lab overhead. I don't remember what that is. If you can just refresh my memory, please.
Lauren, me or you? Either one.
I'll take a minute here. I'm gonna hide this.
Sure.
So Wendy, I'll need you to chime in, but I believe that LAB stands for labor overhead. So perhaps you can walk the committee through the process, please.
Well, part of it, let me before you get there, Wendy, and you can clarify from the other side of it, is basically we changed our labor overhead model of how we're doing our staffing times. Essentially what we're doing is we're going for the fully reimbursed rate for all of our engineers and so forth, and that was adjusted and trued up. It's similar to what we do for other projects, identifying where the total cost of the engineer is, and that's the labor overhead that's been trued up, if you will. And that's what's reflected there. That was one, I don't know if you recall, about a year and a half ago, we got a memo out identifying what our staffing costs were based upon a comparison to our professional engineers that we do hire as well. And basically we had that comparison for the group. This labor overhead chart is kind of falling out of that whole effort and identifying the true cost for our engineers and staffing out there.
Well, you answered it. Thank you.
Actually, you complicated it.
That's what I'm here for.
So what you're saying, that's not benefits.
It's the full cost of the engineers.
Define full cost. To me, full cost means your salary and your benefits.
Salary, benefits, overhead,
Overhead meaning what?
building, electrical, office space.
I don't believe that was the intent when people were doing it, that we're going to begin putting administrative overhead against bond funds. Benefits are a direct part of that person working. You're going to have that building there, whether Measure P or S existed before.
But I wouldn't have the rental space for those engineers there if the engineers are only there to deliver the projects, and their portion of that is due to the capital projects that they're working on. Whether it's Measure P, Measure S, CIP, PMSA, NCIP, all engineers are broken down to work on their projects. I wouldn't have office space if it was not for delivering those projects, and that's what that calculation identifies.
Okay, I can't sign off on those figures for saying it's consistent. That's me personally. All right, I would need to see exactly how you're doing everything, because now you're taking things that, to me, that building's there regardless. We're not renting outside office space, to my knowledge.
Yes, we are actually.
We are.
The Wave Street office is a rental. You're renting that from a different division within the city coffers. It's not owned by a private company.
We're not renting it from the outside. It's a city building being used. And we're playing the game of moving things between departments as another way of getting money taken out of the sales tax funds.
Our people are there. It's not available for rent right now. If our people weren't there, it would be available for rent.
You're not renting a non-city facility.
Well, that would be silly because we have offices.
I agree, and that's that's the issue I'm having here with using dedicated sales tax funds that are meant to be paving streets to be basically shuffling money between city departments. So more can be taken out of this, so it doesn't have to come out of the general fund. That's the issue I'm having with this. That's not the intent. I understand the labor of a person who's doing the work, including all their benefits. Great. But I said, from my standpoint, it's not consistent.
And also the like you said, the rent, the vehicle they drive to the job site to inspect, the gas they burn to go there. It's all part of that overhead cost that has to be recovered. So there's building, yes. There's vehicle expenses, yes. Everything they need to do their job is part of that labor overhead.
Said, Steve, you're not going to be changing my mind, so.
I understand.
Well, and I thought that, early on, we had this discussion, and maybe I'm not remembering correctly, help me out here, but I thought that got adjusted, that those types of expenses that Rick is outlining that he has an issue with, I think I do too. But I thought that we had this conversation a long time ago, and those got pulled out.
So having stuck this for the last year and a half, I don't remember us pulling it out. We can look at the minutes. I certainly would have been responsive to it because this conversation is pretty specific. Looking at it from another optics, should the committee or the city outsource the services to consultant engineers, their rates would be substantially higher, and their rates certainly would include these costs plus a profit margin. I think we do need to look at the inconsistency. To be honest with you, if we were to use an engineer on payroll and not charge overhead, while an engineer through Harris would have a boatload of overhead costs. I know it's a bit disconcerting, but I think putting it into that perspective hopefully creates a sense of, I think, comfort around the practice. It's not unreasonable, because if we hired the same engineer through Harris, they would be charging all this overhead plus some.
We would have a very
Okay, so-
simple way of explaining it to the public, because it's the bill coming from Harris. It's not paper shuffling within the city of facilities already there. Yes, it may end up being the same amount, but you're looking at a magnitude that's almost 50% of the labor plus benefits cost. That's hard to explain to a layperson in the public who is told this is going to be used to build streets. Instead, because there's always a fear that it's going to go for administrative, it's going to go for the labor and the things. It's a way of a city shuffling their numbers to get it out of the special tax and off the general fund. So yes, a Harris employee may be more expensive, but from a standpoint of the invoice you're getting for that to the general public, it's very clear. Good luck explaining this to the general public.
I think the general public would understand that an engineer needs a building, a computer, a vehicle to get to a site, specialty training, and the general public also understands the vehicle needs to be insured, it needs maintenance, and it needs fuel. I think the general public can understand those are the accessories associated with an individual in this role.
Well, and my question then would be for the general public then to see it when you have this is being spread out over all the projects, how many times that building is being paid for and that car is being paid for and that maintenance is being paid for. Is it totaling what it is annually, or is in point of fact the city profiting off of a bond measure from that?
Sure. So having a basis for that allocation, totally valid. So, you know, Steve and I will be happy to bring that back. Tom Lewandowski was very instrumental in us developing that, so we're happy to share that. You know,
Yeah, and I would modify my argument a little bit. Okay, I would argue, excuse me, I would modify my argument a little bit. In just, I understand what you're saying, Lauren, and that, you know, that does make sense as long as the numbers match up as Carol has asked for.
Sure.
And the only other piece of it is, again, is this something that changed, or has this remained consistent throughout Measure P and S, not just the last year and a half, but Measure P and S?
Right.
So my recollection has always been a labor adjustment throughout the entire process.
Yeah, and I, you know, Carol, you've been part of this from the beginning too, and I simply don't remember. I don't know if you do.
I don't remember, but I don't believe so. There was labor in there, but there was not the costs that are the way it is presented now. Maybe it's just a difference in presentation, but it was not presented the way it is currently.
So if we could, yeah, if we could get that audit of those expenses per Carol's request, that would certainly be helpful for me.
Okay. So
and again, if we could go back to Measure P and review minutes to see again if that's something that actually changed.
okay.
I remember in the very beginning when your predecessor was there, Lauren, there was an item he was including and we strenuously objected and he got out. Now, I can't remember exactly.
Rick, I can, Rick. I can actually remember it as well. And if you look at to pick any of the labor ones you have, I have them out on my other screen, which is just page 2, where it lists through the various engineers and so forth, where it starts with Corman and ends with Francisco. Part of the initial process that we were looking at, the discussion centered around, do we include city attorney, city finance director? Do we include those other ancillary costs similar to what we do in NIP and CIP? And that was a discussion. And then what we did is our way to get through that was everybody who's not basically working on a project directly was removed. So obviously, to our conversation before, when a project comes through from an engineer, it has to go through legal, has to go through the city clerk's office and so forth. But all those costs are not included on the spreadsheet. and it's just broken down to the engineering. So if you look through all the different subcategories, you only see engineering staff or some laborers like Mike Gentry is a streets laborer who assisted with some street work as well. Directly, those are the folks who only do work on Measure P, putting basically the pavement on the street. And that was the distinction we did early on, and we did have a lot of discussion about that.
We had the discussion, I remember, Rick, specifically, it was when Jimmy put his salary in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all been pulled off. So that's why the staff that's in there right now is simply the engineers and folks who are working directly on the streets.
Okay.
So Carol, I can put my salary in there?
No, thank you. Hey, I can put my salary in there now. It's 0. It worked out well for you.
I just looked back to FY 16 and 17, and there was labor overhead on those years.
Thank you.
I think we need the breakout of those and showing how it's being attributed and where it's coming from. And so we can honestly go to the public and say, you're not being double charged.
Okay.
And
Yeah, if
exactly
we can, yep.
included. Because there's always been, from my standpoint, when you say labor overhead, it's benefits. Is the benefit, which is directly related. I've never had in mind of thinking of I'm paying a piece of the car and the gas and the rent of a city building that the city already owns. And yeah.
And if I could speak, so when we did discuss this years ago, and that's what was discussed, was that the benefits would be things such as, their insurance and vacation and all those little pieces that added up, but it was not the vehicle or office space charge. There was nothing like that prior. Nothing like that discussed.
Great. Well, if we can maybe just get that broken out for us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would have been the bulk of that discussion would have happened back in 2017 during our meetings. It was right when I had first begun. I think it was 2016, 2017, something like that.
Right. Any other questions?
Well, just when we get that breakout, it also then the detailed explanation of true up adjustments.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm taking some notes here. What I heard was we want to kind of walk the committee through the methodology and the calculation to ensure there's a common understanding of what's included, and also to ensure that we are not overcharging, that the aggregate of the allocation doesn't accrue more than 100%. And that we also explain the true up process. Does that capture it, Carol?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great. I don't know if you want to go through the rest of the expenses, or if we bring this explanation back and continue this conversation. I'll defer to you on how you want to handle it, Carol.
Rick, Nick, we have them bring it back to us.
I'd be more comfortable bringing it back before we vote on approving expenses.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I agree.
Okay. I think, Lisa, can you tell us when our next meeting is? I forgot if we had set these meeting every 2 months or every 3 months. I know those are kind of long timelines for this explanation, but just refresh my memory when our next meeting is.
I am checking. It's every 3 months,
Okay.
and we
So
have the date.
So that's too long from now. Carol, can you give us maybe a couple of weeks? We need to pull that together. We also have a staff report for council relative to TOT that's got some legislative documents too. So I would probably say give us a couple of weeks to get back to this committee just so we can juggle a couple of other agendas.
Yeah.
Steve, are you okay with that? Because Tom Lewandowski is going to need to be involved. Is 2 weeks okay? Or I don't know what else. What's that?
That'll be fine.
I mean,
Okay.
Lauren, why don't you wait until like the first week of August? Because you're going to be real busy through the rest of this month with.
Yeah.
I will be, so if the committee is okay for us to hold the follow-up, after the county filing deadline for the tax measure, that will give all of us some breathing room and we don't have to compromise anything relative to the taxes. That I'd be grateful for that. So if the committee is amicable to that idea, then we can set a date now for those that are on this call.
That date is August 7th, isn't it?
Right, the filing deadline with the county is August 7th. Likely we'll have one backup meeting in our pocket, which is August 3rd. So we can possibly meet maybe the following Monday, which would be August
August 10th.
10th. Maybe look at our calendars.
That would be okay with me. Rick, Nick.
Okay with me?
Okay with me.
Okay with me.
Shall we pick 10 a.m.?
Yes, thank you.
On which day again?
Sure.
Monday, August 10th.
Okay.
Steve, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll make it work.
Okay, so we will follow up with that additional information and we'll maintain the expenditure reports as they are at that time, if that's okay, through May 31st. One of the reasons is because by August 10th, we will not have June closed anyway, since we have a 60-day accrual period. If June was closed, I'd offer the idea of presenting new content for you, but June won't be closed yet either. So just to set expectations, we'll still have the May 31st report, which is in this agenda, and we'll provide more information on the labor true-up. Is that okay, Carol?
Yes, that's fine with me. Everybody else, are you all right with that?
Yes.
Good for Nick.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now we'll move on to the periodic report for the period of July 1, 2019 through May 31, 2020.
So if that contains the same numbers, same calculations that we have questions on, is that contingent also on getting that true up acceptable or understood at least?
Yes. Yeah.
I think, you know, everything in the report looks fine with the possibility of some adjustments to the numbers.
Right. So we'll review that as well when we get those other numbers.
Okay.
Perfect. Then, do we have anything else? Do we need to, are there any, I don't remember, do we need to ask for, since we always do it without public usually, do we need any other public comment at this time? Or are we available to adjourn?
I don't have it.
For matter of order, Carol, since we acted on those two items, even though we didn't vote, you may want to just take a moment to see if there are any public comments on the two items on the agenda, and Lisa can just see if anyone has called in.
We don't have any callers at this time.
Okay. And actually, do we need then for this other meeting to continue those items, or are we just going, it's going to be an extension of this meeting?
Right, so we can continue this meeting. We will agendize everything again, so you get a packet with the same content. But for the purpose of the minutes for this meeting, we will not have voted on either of those items.
Right. Okay.
With the committee's direction that we schedule a meeting for August 10th at 10 a.m. with additional information as it pertains to the labor overhead.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else have any other questions? We move to adjourn then.
Great.